one of the things that you and I wanted to talk about was like AI and
Oh
how
yeah.
that's changing music and art and what to really make of it. And I think it's really, really difficult sometimes to create that in AI. I mean, they kind of come close. They try to come close, but I think for people who have actually experienced, like the real piece of fruit, can tell the difference between what's real and what's not. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting because I don't know. I think there's some applications for it that could be useful, but it's kind of like a tricky slope.
Yeah, and now it seems almost like the easy way out of like, oh, are you going to, take a horse and buggy? Or are you actually just gonna drive there?
Right,
So I'm
right,
seeing it used more and more of like, oh, this is the low cost, easy option, and everybody just jumps on that bandwagon. And to reference the Cure jumping someone else's train, like everybody just
right,
jumps on this train, and then stuff all, kind of like samey, but that has happened in like every generation of everything just congeals into the sameness no matter what it is. But now it's congealing into a thing that it's not even technically really made by people. you
right,
know like
right,
every era had the way things looked, and if you look like Edwardian era versus Art Deco era, the 60s, like 50s, like very clear cut um zeitgeist there. And now it's like, this is where we are, or typing in words into this machine to get something, and the person doing it doesn't have to know how to do art or anything.
right.
A- and then people are like, oh, that's so cool. Like, really?
Well, yeah, you and I have talked about this before, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think, um, because we talk about a lot of these issues, and I think what's happening is that, art and making music or being an actor or actress or anything that has to do with expression is it's perceived as this kind of job that like anybody can do. And I do agree that anybody can make art, but I also feel like it's not like something you just, put in a resume for and then you go in 9 to 5 and you're an artist and then after you're done, you're done. You know, I know you and I usually talk about the fact that when you're an artist, you just are 24/7 and those navigating being an artist isn't something you just turn off or wear like a coat and then take it off. It's like it's with you all the time. And there are a lot of great, high points to that emotionally and spiritually. And there's a lot of dives in that too. And I don't think that's really mentioned a whole lot as being an artist because, you know, being an artist to most people is like this, you know, um, it's kind of like the celebration aspect of it, like what you see on top of the surface, all this glorified stuff. There's a lot of deepness and darkness sometimes when you're an artist because you see the world differently. You don't see the world like most people do. And I think that's a special thing. I think that's something that um makes for the uniqueness of each artist.
Yeah, it every artist has a voice, and then that kind of stems into, well, can't anyone be an artist? And it's true that anyone can put effort into art and be an artist, but with AI, I feel it's a little different. And if you look at like, I think like some of the last surviving human art forms might be like dance, or being an athlete. Cause like we just had the Olympics. It's like, okay, you physically have to do that. You can't have like a robot do your gymnastics for you, at least not yet. Maybe one day the robots will be doing gymnastics, hopefully not. But and just like an artist, athletes have that time to where it's like their career waxes and wanes because you just look at the highlights, like these top athletes, they're just highlighting all the times they win. And yes, they are very good at what they do. Um, but every athlete that gets to that high level has lost games, has fallen, has
Sure.
missed. And I think we need to focus more on the whole picture.
Yeah.
Instead of it's
Hmm.
like the iceberg where you're just looking at the very tip of the iceberg, like, okay, this is the moment they won the gold medal, but where's all the whole story that
The
got them
journey
there?
in the process. Yeah,
Yeah, how many
absolutely.
times had they had to have fallen or missed a shot or lost a game to have gotten to
Yes.
that higher level? So,
Right.
um, but with art now, it's like almost like AI. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna drive to the finish line. Like,
Yes.
why would I run? Why would I
Oh yeah.
swim? Why would I cycle when I could just
Hmm.
drive? And
Yeah.
and I'm even seeing graphic designers be like, "Oh, look at this thing I made with Midjourney," and I'm like, do you want to be out of business? Is that what you want?"
Yeah.
And yeah, and what we do is we are kind of doing things almost the old-fashioned way of, the art I just did for Tourmaline Rings was all handmade, and of
Which
course
I
I
love,
didn't
by the way.
I'm like, it's all downstairs. I should have had it around me.
It's okay
Um
if you want to go get it. We can always cut.
yeah, exactly. Um of course it's all the way in the basement because it was like covered in like the monofilament stuff and I don't want my animals to eat it, so
Yeah.
I put
No, I
everything in the
love.
basement.
I love the pictures you sent me. I love the fact that you put so much effort into, just making everything real organic. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to work with you is because I noticed that you're not you're totally not cool with just doing things the fast and easy way. You
Yeah.
recognize how that can be applicable in what we do, but you also recognize that it's important not to rely on such things because then you lose the intention behind what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like it feels a
and
whole
I,
experience.
yeah, and I know sometimes that could be very ridiculing and really um, difficult for other artists to understand or other people to understand. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you copy and paste? And you go, well, I could do that, but I feel like for my message and my art, it's important for me to take the time and make sure that I'm receiving the information correctly. I'm putting it out there correctly. I'm putting all my intentions into what I'm doing. And I really appreciate that about you. So that's why, I've loved working with you this far and everything that we're doing.
Yeah, exactly what you were saying because, you know, you technically could have just, with a keyboard made all the string parts, or that's what a lot of people do. And I'm not criticizing them for doing that, but just I had started playing, uh, I started playing viola back in middle school. So if, like why not do it for real? And with the keyboard, you just don't get the bowing variations. Like
Right.
no matter what you do to it, like, cause with the bow, I can, like, dig in, I can make something a little deeper or, just directional. There's so many different bowing techniques you can do, and you just do not get that with any of the simulated stuff. And maybe down the line, they'll but it's like, even if you just did samples of me doing everything, you if you just hear things in a loop and it was just going over and over, you don't get that organic ebb and flow. Like a lot of music now, people's ears are getting trained to accept stuff that's severely auto-tuned. And that's always perfectly on beat and that every single stroke of that note sounds exactly the same as the last 50 times of you know, but if I sat there and go
Yeah.
it, would have variation, it could have a feeling, I could, like, really build it or, um, really put more into it, so I don't know, I just like having the art as being part of an experience because I was if I was just sitting on the keyboard, it just wouldn't be the same, especially for me being a string player.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I love the staccato parts that you put into the song. It's this is something that you and I both agree on is that it's not meant to be perfect. What does that even mean? What's the concept of perfect? And if uh if everything were perfect, then like what would that really look like and how would that feel most importantly? So I really appreciate the fact that your playing is exceptional. It was wonderful, but it's
Thank
supposed
you.
to sound real. It's supposed to sound
Yeah.
real, and you get that. So I would definitely appreciate that. How do you what's your process usually, Judy, when you create or when you make a song? Because I know everybody's process is different. What's your process? Do you have a specific idea when you're trying to create a song, or does it usually come to you, or how does that work for you?
There's no formula, and I think being open is part of my process because sometimes I start with a concept. Like I've done songwriting exercises where it's like, oh, it's going to be on this theme. But then another time I'll just hear something in my head and record it in a memo of me just humming. Or I could be just having an instrument in my hand and messing around and I'll record that, but I don't record it to a click or anything. I'll just record it like just a voice memo so I don't have any constraints. Like I don't
Hmm.
feel like so I can mess with the tempo and just feel it out. And then I go back and refine it and then maybe get some lyrics, or I'll start with some lyrics and be like, oh, these words, hey, that really speaks to me. And then I'll turn it into a song. So it's so many different avenues where it could come from. And I think not having a particular avenue has helped me create more and faster to where I think just taking away like certain barriers, like I rarely start in the computer. Every once in a while I'll have like the DAW open and come up with that idea. Okay, this works. But usually it doesn't start that way. Usually it's just me and my phone and I'm just like humming. I'm either humming if I don't have an instrument, or sometimes if I do have an instrument, I could work it out in my head and hum it faster and then translate it to the instrument. Or if I'm already on the instrument and I like know where I'm going with it, I'll start there. Um so yeah, I think it's not giving myself restraints which help because I feel like restraints if I'm like, okay, I'm stuck in this tempo, or if I'm stuck with this, I'm stuck with that, or these lyrics have to be this, then
Hmm.
I feel like then the song isn't becoming
Right.
as organic. I'm like, sometimes I have done that to where it's like, oh, I wrote these lyrics and but if it's not fitting the tune, then I'm like, oh, these words just don't fit. And then you're trying to like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
ram a square peg in a round hole and it's just not working. And sometimes you just have to kind of let that go. And I've had times where I've written a song and I wrote the music and the lyrics, and if they may be conflicting, sometimes it splits off into two different songs. I just have to
Yeah.
let go and be like, these are two different things. So sometimes when I'm creating, I don't even know what I'm creating and I might not even know what it's about. It's like that stream of consciousness. And
Hmm.
then sometimes later I realize what the song is about, like something that was within me. And,
Yes, it's very true.
yeah, like something that's just inside of you and it just comes out, and
Mhm.
then you later analyze your own songs and you're like, "Oh my god, that's what that was about." I've had that happen to
Yeah.
me, and then I've actually like cried because I thought I was
Yep.
writing a song that was like, you know, trippy or happy, and then I was like, "Oh no, this is actually about something really dark."
Yes. Yeah, no, it's and I agree with you. I would say the same, the exact same pretty much for me, is there isn't really any formula. I usually start on piano and guitar because it's like the foundation, and I always have a guitar, acoustic guitar laying around. But then from there, I just start getting the impression of whether it should be electronic, it should just be acoustic. Sometimes I'll hear it already in my head. Um, but yeah, I agree that being open to the process is key because, like in anything, you never want to have like a very just strict method because then you kind of get yourself into like a little corner, especially creatively. I think the understanding that all colors of creation kind of just go outward and it shouldn't necessarily be contained or have too many rules. Um, that's definitely been my process throughout the years for sure. Um, Same way, I'll record a lot of ideas on my phone. I'll be driving down the road, not even thinking about music for that second, and all of a sudden a lyric comes in or a melody comes in. So I'll have to like, all the bass parts. I'll say, new song idea, bass, and then that whole thing. I'm sure you do the
Oh
same
my
thing.
god.
And then
Yeah,
keys,
story of my life.
synthesizer, guitar, so and I have, I've had to back up a lot of these little pieces on the computer and I'm looking through all this stuff of all these song ideas and I'm going, I don't even know when I'll get to those. And then for the songs that are actually written and complete, I write so much that I don't even have the time to record them. So I'm kind of slowly kind of even going back to songs 10, 15 years, that I should have recorded that are great songs. I just never had the time to do that. So it's good because you always have this like, you know, um, collage of songs that you can work on and improve on or just record just to get out there, all while still creating new songs. I know you and I are going to be collaborating on a Halloween song. That was
Yeah.
one of those things where we talked about it, and I was like, well, I could write a new Halloween song, but I have a Halloween song in the bag, and I'm like, I'm having to go back, you know, gosh, like 20 plus years of a song I wrote when I was like 16. So um, it's kind of cool in that way because you're kind of looking at your old work in a new way. Um, and if it's there, it's there. Why not record it? How do you navigate um, just life in general and work and being busy and the balance of work and creating? How does that process work for you, and how do you settle?
Um, that is a very interesting question because I'd like to say, "Oh yeah, I have this method and it totally works," but I feel like it's just kind of a free fall and I'm hitting branches as I go down. Like I can make a plan, like I have a planner, I have Google Calendar, and you can budget your time, but then you never know how you're going to feel. And then I work as a veterinary assistant for a surgeon, so I wake up at 4:45 in the morning Monday through Friday. That's brutal. It's very brutal. Um and then with my job, I like hit the ground running because I am responsible for triage. So any patients that have any concerns post-op, I'm responsible for that. So for the whole clinic. And then I'm assisting the doctor with a bunch of stuff and helping recover patients, prepare instruments. And so it's not an easy job. It's a job with a lot of responsibility. and a lot of physical work. So, and then also in the morning when I get up, why I get up so early, I have to be at work at 7:30. It takes about 25 minutes ish to get to my work. And then before that, I'll go for a walk and do a little bit of physical activity just to feel like I'm taking care of myself. But sometimes taking care of yourself takes a lot of extra time. And then trying to weave in the creative stuff, like, for example, the Tourmaline Rings kites, it's like I didn't do that all within one day, 1 week, or 1 month even. Like, those are little pockets of time. It's like maybe one night I'll feel like I have enough energy to do something because 'cause I'll have things on my calendar and have things scheduled, but sometimes I come home and I'm just wrecked. I'm, like,
Yeah.
so tired and I can't do anymore, and I'm also doing, live shows. I have my band, Glass Aeros, which this year has been kind of a crazy year for the band, but it's all for the better. Went through some band member changes, but that was all. People have to really want to be doing a project because my project is, it's serious. I want to produce something good, and so it takes a commitment level.
Yes.
I'm not asking for people, you know, to give everything, but you have to be able to fill the role that's required of the project to be on the project. It's not like, well, we're just going to wing it. So I'm about to go in
Yeah.
the studio for that. So it's every week is it's just kind of, and then you have all your personal stuff, things that just kind of come up like doctor's appointments and things that just happen of someone's like, oh, I need help with this, and or social obligations, like things that are going on with friends and family and all things I really love, and you're trying to fit it in, and then you just feel bad sometimes, especially we've talked about this with our partners, we're working on the weekend. We work all week. And on the weekend, it's like,
Yes.
oh, well, I have to do my other work, my creative work. So it's hard to find time for just that relaxation, or what I call of just like being a potato. You just want
Hmm.
to relax. And Sheila, I I think this is my dog saying she wants attention. Sheila, hi. Um, yeah. Yeah. Oh, she's running from me. My little dog is like, she's weaving in and out of my legs. She say hi, Sheila.
Hi.
This is Ian, my husband.
All right, nice to meet
Hi,
you.
Ian.
This is
Hi, nice to
Jamie,
meet you.
and this is Sheila.
Hi, Sheila. To
You got
Sheila.
She's loud and opinionated, Jack Russell, and you can also see my Dalmatian Dahlia in
That's cute.
background.
Animals are
Yeah,
great, right? Sometimes they're like, even with my cats, I have, more than a few cats, and um, sometimes they're pain in the ass, but you love them to death. So it's just one of those types of relationships. But yeah, I've always been an animal lover. Um, I think back to what you're saying. Um, you know, we talked about before how difficult it can be to be in charge of your own artistic enterprise.
yeah,
It's very, very challenging. It's very, very demanding. And even for some that are actually lucky enough that, they don't have too much going on to where they can really 100% focus in on it, it is really, really challenging, especially if you're not like, you know, crazy financially rich and even then, it's probably got its own challenges there too. But my schedule's pretty similar to yours. I wake up at 5 a.m. Um, Monday, it's going to be Tuesday through Friday, and so it's 40-hour week, 10 hours a day. So I do have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off, which is great. But then it's like your weekends are spent doing a lot of the things that you couldn't do during the week, and you know how that goes.
oh yeah,
Um, and then yeah, and then I have a family too, and I'm in, charge of their happiness and their financial stability, and then just with personal things, with family, and it can be very, very draining, very, very difficult. So my process is pretty similar to yours, I'd say. Um, it's just trying not to put too much pressure on myself, um, focusing on why I'm doing this to begin with, and I know we've talked about this before, where it's like, as long as I have these fingers and these hands, and I have the brain and the heart to put in the effort of what makes me happy, I can do that forever. It does become pretty daunting at times, just because the weight of the world is on you. But no, I think that's kind of the attitude that you need to prolong and to stay steady at something. Do I wish I could put out more music? More? Yes, absolutely. But I also recognize that for what I have on my plate, it's the best that I can do, and I'm happy doing it. And for those who will listen, I think that that's amazing, and I wish more people will listen. That's always the battle. But
Yeah.
no, just staying consistent as best as you can, um, in whatever works with you. So that's always a challenge, I think, in balancing life and art, artistic pursuits. So
And money.
yeah,
That's
and
become,
money.
yeah, a challenge of uh but I think those challenges kind of make things unique,
Hmm.
like with those constraints, because yeah, there's some artists that were historically commissioned to do things and had the money and funding, but then there were the artists that it's like, well, this is what you got. And a lot of stuff I make art out of, it's like everyday objects.
There's something to be said about that when you take that kind of punk rock attitude and go, what, this is happening regardless. I may not have money to make all these professional shirts, but I'm gonna put myself into what I'm doing, and it's gonna happen. In essence, you're kind of manifesting something. And as long as you're manifesting your true intentions with your art, I think that's wonderful. I think that's kind of what it's all about.
Well, and you're taking away those barriers of like, oh, this has to be look like this. It's like, yeah, I'd love to hire professional photographers for everything, but I understand everyone needs to get paid for their work. I'm like, yeah, but if I'm doing this for not just my personal enjoyment, and I'm like, I can't pay $600 for like a photo shoot. And photographers do excellent work, and they're definitely worth the work they produce, but I still have to make the art. And if that's going to be me, a cell phone, and sitting into a vacant lot, you know, that that's what just happened yesterday. Went to a vacant lot, set up a photo shoot with a tent structure I had, and hung the kites. I actually recycled the ribbon I had from the Misfit Toy Box video. So that's where all that red ribbon came from. So that's
That's
kind of cool
awesome.
to connect that in. Stuff I've a lot of it's stuff that's lying around my house. Like the kites were made from like barbecue skewers and
Yeah,
um I already had some red thread. I bought the fabric for it, but it ended up they turned out really great. And it's just kind of that whole organic putting everything together and then doing the photo shoot ourselves. Like we took that whole thing from like makeup to setting everything up and taking all the pictures took like 5 hours.
yeah,
I wouldn't have
yeah,
been able to spend that time if I had to pay someone for that time. I just wouldn't have been able to. Like if I had the money, great, I could pay for it, but I can't. Um,
yeah,
so and of course the perfectionist in me is like, oh, what if I tweak this? What if I tweak that? And yeah, I didn't have a lot of time because the sun's setting and you're trying to get everything done, and you're in this vacant lot, you just can't leave everything there, and um so yeah, but got it done and it felt really satisfying afterwards, but did all my own makeup, all the set design, everything, and I think I got some cool pictures. I sent you some.
Oh yeah, they look they looked awesome. I was really happy with them. But that's what I like. That's what I like about working with you, Judy, is that we're kind of on that same page. I've told you this before. It sounds kind of funny, but it's totally true. The more that we talk, I'm like, oh, you're just the female version of me. In a lot of ways, our thoughts and ideas and kind of the way we go about things. I would say you probably have a better work ethic than I do. I really admire how hard you work at things, and you are the real deal in terms of practicing your craft, and just being everything that you say that you are. And I really appreciate that. That's why I love working with you. Um, but yeah, I think doing things on a DIY level is, of course, very, very hard, but I think very, very rewarding in the end. Um, for a lot of reasons. So, but you're right. I've taken pictures that were just like, meant to be very quick, but of course, as your ideas start rolling and things just start happening, it can really eat up hours, really quickly. So I
But
definitely
that's the
understand.
magic. Exactly what you're
It
saying,
is.
like, where you get on this inspiration, you're like, "Oh, what if we do this?" And when I
Yeah.
was doing that photo shoot, it like, there's what I had in my head, but then as I was setting up and hanging the kites, it was like coming out a little different, but then
Hmm.
it was coming out okay, well, hey, let's just roll with it. But then if I was working on this time schedule of, oh, you only have this much time, you only have that much time, da 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 da, you know, would it would I have had time to kind of develop that? And that's kind of everything I've done. There's the initial idea, but then as I'm doing it, then it's like, oh, okay, well, what if this was happening? Now that we're doing this, I'm seeing this because you don't really see certain things until you set it all up. Could set
Right.
everything up to a plan, but then you start seeing, oh, what about this angle? What about that angle? Oh my God, if we went over top, then it's gonna look like that. Like I was actually thinking of doing the photo head on, but then the way everything was kind of positioned, I'm like, oh, well, kind of do it from above and different angles. And yeah, so I wouldn't have had that freedom. And I think a lot of it is freedom, you know.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's weird because you have these ideas in your head of how something's going to go. And like even in music, like for me, like I hear the song in my head and it makes perfect sense. But then trying to take something in your head and putting it in a form where others can hear it, that's always the trick, right? That's always the challenge. But sometimes it works out perfectly, and sometimes it takes you on a whole other journey that you never even really expected. I guess that's part of
Yeah.
the process, you know?
Exactly, like, sometimes I used to get stuck,
Hmm.
on like, "Oh, it has to sound like this," and I wouldn't allow the process to happen, but then once
Yeah.
I started allowing the process to happen, but then also dealing with perfectionism, imposter syndrome, which I deal with imposter syndrome a lot.
Hmm.
And also, like, you know, um embarrassing yourself in public or whatever you want to say of like, oh, hey, there's people walking by, recreating when you're like dressed up, all crazy makeup, like hanging random things from a structure and, then all on the ground doing things. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of people that are going to stare at you like, I don't know what's going on. And you also have to be like, well, is someone going to like call the cops?
Right, right.
You always have
Yeah.
to have that in the back of your mind, but, no one's called the cops on me yet, so good. But yeah, I think it's all this freedom of DIY gives you so much freedom because if you think of artists that are at this high level, well, then they're dealing with so many other cooks in the kitchen and people and saying, oh, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. And, how much is actually coming from the artist, or is it, oh, this person hired to do the music video wants to do it this way? And then you just
Yeah,
become a
exactly.
puppet in this
Yeah.
production. And then it's your
Yes.
song, but then is it actually saying what you were wanting it to say? And then you just didn't have any say in this
Yeah.
part of it.
There becomes too much artistic compromise. And sometimes in this case at that high level, sometimes it comes from people who aren't artists, so to speak. It's just people, in the office telling you what to do. So I think you and I are in a very fortunate position in a lot of ways in that respect that we can do what we want to do, how we want to do it. Of course, the time and effort thing is just huge, but just the simple fact that we can create essentially whatever we want when we want it is a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah, it's like a crop you grew yourself,
Hmm.
You grew the tree your whole life and now you're harvesting the apples and making your own pie, and it
Yes.
tastes completely different than if, you went to the store or just got apple pie filled.
Yes.
It's and I feel like what we were saying before of a lot of artists, we like them better when they were working with less, when they were starting out, and then all of a sudden they get big and then more people tell them what to do or record labels tell them what to do, and then it's just not the same because it
Right.
isn't.
So so we talked about like the process, and how important it is to trust the process and what you're doing creatively in music and visually. And we both agree on that. Do you think there's anything to be learned in the creative process of trusting the process creatively and correlating that to like life?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I feel like the more I trust the creative process, I kind of let myself grow and learn to like trust myself, because a lot of times like I wasn't trusting myself, especially like as a child, it's like you're in school, you're told to do certain ways, you're being graded. And, even when I was in orchestra, it's like, oh, you have to play exactly this and it has to be exactly that. And if it's not, if it's a little off, then that's considered wrong. And it was very hard to break away from that and be like, well, I kept thinking, oh, things have to be, impressive and complex. And
Sure.
I had to really grow into myself. And then the more you do, the more confidence you have of like, especially some earlier releases, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And in a sense, you never know what you're doing because every new release is a new thing. So even
Yes.
when I did this weekend, I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm like, I kind of know what the plan is, but then it just kind of took on its own form. And then you learn from that and you're like, okay, well, the next time, then it's a process. I think when we were talking about the music video we're going to eventually do for this, we are saying, oh, well, it sounds like a lot of work, but I'm like, hey, I want to do it because it's a learning experience that then could take me to another level. It's like, oh, if I do something that's like stop motion, it may be, for a little bit of the video it may be excruciating, but then hey, I learned a new skill, and I think everything I do, I'm essentially learning a new skill or learning, hey, this is something I can do. Or so, a lot of it's in the moment. Like I was doing my makeup yesterday and I was like, okay, I wanted my makeup to kind of look like the design I did on the kites, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to like um block out my eyebrows. I had no idea how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That went down a rabbit hole of having I had some like Halloween like wax stuff I ended up putting on them, and then yeah, it was this whole thing that I had to redo my makeup a few times to get it, but then I'm like, "Oh, okay." I learned a little bit more about makeup at the photo shoot, definitely learned about like setup and what I can do differently and other times, or what went well. And I think everything in that experimentation is just valuable. And then you also feel like this, you know, and you're saying how it translates to you yourself, your development as a person. You feel like this sense of satisfaction, and you also feel like, oh, you know, I increased my capabilities. And I
Yeah,
feel like, you just have to keep building on that. And yeah, I deal a lot with imposter syndrome, a lot with I feel like in music there's a lot of ageism, and you
oh
know,
sure, sure.
once you're like over 17, it's like, you know,
Well, I yeah, no, I know we've talked about this before. It's a very important subject. I feel like, for me, even just the process of being willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. That's definitely something that's helped me in music. Or at least what music has taught me is that, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations is usually going to result in an outcome that you're going to grow from, you're going to learn from. I have tons of music that I put out early on that you listen to and you go, okay, that wasn't recorded very well, or he sounds like he may not know what he's doing, but I chose to release it and put it out there, just kind of total transparency, to let other people know, like, hey, there is a process to this, and there's growth, and we're always going to be in a state of learning, right? Because if we were there, wherever there is, if we were, you know, at that point, it's like, what would be purpose? Then you'd get there and you go, well, what next? I really enjoy always striving for something. I think that that's been key for me to learn from music and take that into my personal life. And kind of just back to the ageist thing. Yeah, we live in a very ageist or critical society, and it's horrible because I always thought that, or I believe truly that creating is, you're closer to God. And whether you believe in God, you can say tapping into the universe, which that's kind of how I feel, whatever it may be, a higher order. um I feel like when you create, you're closer to that. You're kind of walking alongside whatever that is. And I don't believe that there's any age at which someone stops doing that. I think that a lot of what we see in, like, the ageism in music or creativity or entertainment, that just comes from a false reality. You and I have talked about this many times, but something that I truly believe that once you kind of break down what true reality is, then you'll start to see that none of that even exists. That ageist stuff, or you have to be a certain age for this, you have to be a certain age for that, is all bullshit. You are never too old or never too anything to stop creating. You can always create, right?
oh yeah, yeah, it's true. Um, it's just sometimes I feel it's hard with, being an adult, and you're like, I wish this could be my career.
Oh, sure.
But
Sure.
it goes back to that work-life balance where I feel like I've had to live two different lives of like, I have to have my career life, then my artist life, and then some people are like, "Oh, your hobby." Like,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like being an artist
And I
is
get that
a
all the time
lifestyle.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is just your little hobby." I'm like, "No, I spent many years developing this." It's not like
Yeah.
um it's like the stuff I do outside of work, I'm just not defined by my job. Like, I love my job. I help
Sure.
animals. I help get animals through surgeries, and it can be really fulfilling, but it can be also really draining and emotionally draining. And it's a very hard industry. So I'm working in a very difficult industry, but then also trying to
Yeah.
keep um, my creative, um, I'm still trying to be part of the creative industry. And, um, it sucks that it is an industry. And then I have to say animal industry. I would love to just help animals and not think about money and, um, well, like I'd like to just do art and creation and not think about the money I need to do it. So, but I think it really boils down to more time than money.
Yes,
You know, if
definitely.
so, if someone offered me, would you want more time or more money to work on a project? I would take the more time.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, I work for a government agency, and generally speaking, the just the environment that am in, um, is like, either you're pulling your hair out to show that you care about what you're doing, or if you've found a way to reconcile this profession with your passion in music or creating, if you found a way to do that, then you're perceived as that you don't care about your job. And that's always been a strange one for me because I'm surrounded by a lot of people who feel like this is it. Like, yeah, I may move on to better jobs and get higher pay, but like that's the goal in life. And for me, it's like I just want to do what I do forever and ever and ever and feel good about it, make progress in doing so. Because I know that like without this, in a lot of ways, I'm nothing. I have tangible things here like on earth that, like obviously my family, my kids that I love, beyond the stars. But I also know that I can't be a whole and complete person without creating music. And I think sometimes it's really hard for people that don't have that. You and I have that, which is good. It helps
Mhm.
balance us out as hard as life is. We have that, opportunity to have something in our lives that we're like we're other than just work, 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 work. And for those people, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's those people that try to tell you there's something wrong with you, that you should wake up, you should, get back to reality as if they know. And those are the people sometimes that don't really have those things. They don't have anything else other than just what they see in front of them. So I think again, um, just like the DIY, kind of punk rock attitude of making things happen and how difficult that can be sometimes, I think we're in a wonderful position in what we do to be able to have something like that in our lives to kind of teach us that there is something more than just work, work, work all the time.
Yeah, and I think when you get in that work, 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 and make more money, and if I would have focused on money, I could I have education to be in a career where it's money focused, buy that big house, buy the big stuff. But then when you really think about it, it's like a lot of people don't see the mountain of debt in the background.
Oh yeah.
Like a
Hmm.
lot of people with these like big houses and stuff and these big jobs, even if, okay, for example, you're a doctor,
Hmm.
doctors are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt before they even see their first patient
Yes.
as a practicing physician, whether human or animal. You're taking out a wealth of loans, um, because you were just in school and you're paying for the school, but then you're also paying for all your living expenses. And then, yeah, you're buying all this stuff, but is it, you can technically afford it, but what you're affording is just throwing money into the black hole so it doesn't, just enough so it doesn't, eat you alive.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, you know, I'm kind of like trying to live as debt free as possible.
Yes.
And, you know, to be able to have the time to create, because yeah, I could get a job with even more responsibility. I already have a lot of responsibility at my job. Typically I'm working more than 40 hours per week. Like I would love to keep it at 40, but especially in a medical thing, if stuff happens, you know, you're
Hmm.
required to stay there longer. You can't be just like, oh well, so sad. I gotta go.
Yeah.
It's time to leave. I'm like, you can't just do that. Um, but even with that level of responsibility and I'm just trying to find that balance to have enough to live, but also to be comfortable and kind of knowing that I won't get a lot of money or payment for my art. It'd be great if I did, but um and I'm hoping people start to fund um more emerging artists, uh
Yes.
because yeah, it can be really hard, and it is really yeah,
Raising my hand.
it's really discouraging too. And but to think
Yeah.
about it, a lot of the artists that are big, then all of a sudden once they get big, then they talk about, oh, their humble beginnings. I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
well, why aren't people paying attention to more artists in their humble beginning stage? It's like spend $10, go to a random show on like a Wednesday night, and there's some artists out there, that'll definitely surprise you that are just as good as the big name artists. And that's why I don't like comparison and hierarchy with artists and all these award shows. I'm like, it's great for
Yeah.
recognition, but then it's like, oh, this artist is like, oh, I got this award, or I got this gig at this big
Or
place.
this artist is a real artist because, or this artist is a professional because, and I don't.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't buy into all that at all.
they get the
There
professional
are.
stamp of approval, but you're a
Oh yes.
hobbyist, you
Yes,
know?
yes, exactly. Yeah, and I used to get really triggered by that too, because I would talk to a lot of people that are like, "Oh, your hobby." I'm like, "How dare you associate what I do with a hobby, like collecting stamps?" Because when you put your heart and soul into something, it's far more than just a hobby. And I think that that's spans far beyond whether you get paid for it or not. You're right. I would love to just survive off of what I do. Um, and that's ultimately the goal, right? Like to be able to like pay for like some type of a medical bill for, the records you've sold or the songs you've created and the time you've spent. That is a dream. Um, but yes, I don't believe in the hierarchy of, the music industry, so to speak, or entertainment industry. Um, it's a weird fascination I think we have as humans. I've met people before that were into my music or talked to people before that were into my music, and I actually reach out to them to tell them, "Hey, thank you for purchasing my song." I don't have to do that, but I feel um like in this day and age where music is so you know accessible to anybody, you've chosen to listen to my song and buy my song. To me, that's a huge thing. But like when I reach out to these people, not all the time, but when I've reached out to these people, they kind of are kind of taken aback, like, "Oh, of course, like, yeah, I bought your song. Like, you don't have to tell me thank you." And I'm like, "You don't understand. It's a big deal to me. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
take the time, as you've taken the time, to buy my song and actually listen to my song." But it's almost like this weird. I've dealt with the kind of like when I've done that, kind of like they almost want you to kind of pop your collar, because when you don't pop your collar, in a way, it breaks down this perception that they had of you. They
Yeah.
realize in a way, for some people they appreciate that. Some people appreciate, oh, this is a real guy or this is a real person. But I've noticed in my experience where I've actually reached out to people and they're just like, they've almost want you to like be this thing that they've idealized in your mind. Where you're just like,
Yeah.
I can't help but be me and just be grateful. It's kind of weird. I don't know what it is about, just us as humans that, like you say about like, hierarchy in music or entertainment where you're deemed this because you're way up here and you're a professional because of this. Well, there are so many artists in the world that were amazing, hugely amazing and talented that we'll never get to hear about. So,
And I think about that a lot of like artists that will never have recognition, or even in the digital world I get afraid of like Spotify could easily just be like, oh, well, all artists under X amount of plays are just going to disappear from the platform. That may happen at some time because there's so much um out there, and they're like, oh, we want to cut our storage or something, or so there are artists that have passed away that their legacy is on Spotify. So I hope that doesn't ever happen, because I know Spotify had already um done something with the royalties. Like, you don't get royalties if it's not over 1,000 plays, which
right.
is quite ridiculous. It's like, okay, well, if 900 people played my song, I don't even get anything from that.
Yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous, because back in the day, if 900 people bought your song, then you would get the royalties from that 900 people. And they're not, they've definitely made music something you don't pay for anymore.
Yes. Yeah, it's really sad, but I think people are waking up to it. I really believe that we're reaching a point where it's overly saturated with like just so much of that people are starting to slowly but surely recognize the truth, so to speak, in terms of like, hey, this is real, this is a facade, this isn't. And I really hope that that really starts to gain traction in the music industry. We definitely need it. We definitely need it, and so I do hold out hope that that's going to happen.
Yeah,
Um,
and regardless, I'm still gonna do what I feel I need to do. It's like I
mhm,
appreciate every single listener, just like you. But you know, and I'm not doing this for any recognition, or I'm doing this because this is what is like manifesting
oh yeah,
within me. It's like it's not just something I'm doing for fun. If I'm just doing something for fun, I'm gonna just hang out and watch movies and la la la. But it takes a lot of effort. That's why it's not just a hobby. Like, if it was just a hobby,
right,
I wouldn't care about a deadline. I wouldn't care about when something happens. But if you're like, okay, I got release dates, or I'm meeting this deadline, I'm scheduling these shows, that's professional. Like, I'm
yes,
booking a show at a venue, that's a professional relationship, a professional contract you have. That's why I don't like when people just say, "Oh, it's just a hobby." I'm like, well, if I
yeah,
just played guitar and never left my house, never released anything on a platform, then maybe you could say, "Oh, it's just a hobby level." But we're releasing music. We're we're making an original. We're releasing it. We're promoting it. We're investing in it. We're, you know, scheduling live performances. It's like more than just, oh, I don't know what else am I gonna do this weekend? Oh, I think I'm gonna do this. Like, and I don't do it when I just feel like it. That's another thing. It's like how I really grew as an artist is doing it more often than I just felt like it, like pushing myself. Like, if because before, when you're young, you're like, oh, I have this idea, and blah, 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 and this is when I feel the inspiration. But then you have to work on it when you don't feel inspired, when you feel dead tired, when you're like, I just want to go to bed right now. But no, I have to make this happen, and I have to make it by this certain time and release it and make it into something. So that's where it becomes something that's not a hobby. I guess that's how I define it, is when you're really pushing yourself and making it into a professional work and releasing it just like any other professional. Because going into the studio, even if it's your home studio, you're still making it. Like, if I was making cupcakes, if I went and I made cupcakes and I made all these cupcakes and I'm selling these cupcakes, I get the food certification and the permits to make professional cupcakes. Then I become a professional cupcake person because I have food inspections and all that, and I'm selling it, and I'm um, committing and getting contracts to doing cupcake events. And so, that's the same thing, but people understand it more when you talk about cupcakes. You're like, oh, I have cupcakes. Do you want to buy a cupcake? And they're like, oh, sure, I'll buy a cupcake. They get the cupcake. But then why is
Hmm.
it different if it's you replace cupcake with song? Then you're like, I don't know, I don't get it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of self-worth that's tied into it, right? Just because your your self-worth depends on you doing what you do, right? And I know that's certainly how I feel. I feel like if I'm not putting things out there and creating things and releasing songs and creating, I feel like, what am I doing with myself? Like that alone is enough for me to do what I do, to continue doing what I do, because I know what it was like to not create for 3 years straight when I had when my wife and I were having our son, and so I kind of got the whole, well, I really need to thrust myself deep into work, and I really can't put forth the effort and the time that I would, you know, commit to making music. And I wouldn't say bitter about it, because I took my role as a father very, very seriously, as I still do today. But I noticed that shutting out music completely, because I couldn't even listen to music, because it would start the ideas and the feelings of wanting to pick up a guitar, and I really didn't know how to balance those two because I was so deep into work. My family definitely noticed it, that I just wasn't the same person. I was not the same person when I didn't make music. Now that I have that balance of, you know, work life, personal life, creation, I know more now than ever that I need that creation to become a whole and complete person, to be a better dad, to be a better husband, to be essentially a better person. And because I know what that was like when I didn't have it, pretty far gone. So I'm really glad that, it's kind of, turned itself around, and I'm kind of here doing, what I'm doing today. So I think I think you and I share a lot of influences of artists and bands. I would fair to say. Who are some of the bands that you grew up listening to, or artists you grew up listening to, that had an impact on you when you first got started making music?
um, I'd say, definitely Smashing Pumpkins, which kind of brought us together. That was like really my top band. But I've
Hmm.
also listened to The Cure, Joy Division, and those are also influences that kind of stem from the Smashing Pumpkins. And um, I listened to my parents' music, of course, the Beatles, the Cars, and yeah, I've been pretty open with music. Like I actually, growing up around me, people weren't listening to the music that I felt the most connection with. A lot of people were listening to hip hop, R&B, and I
Hmm.
listened to that too. But it was just interesting that I was always this odd one out, and I never found, like, growing up, I never found other Smashing Pumpkins fans or
Right.
people that liked the music I liked. Like in my high school, like I was the odd person out. Like, I was the one goth chick that liked the Smashing Pumpkins, and I was like, well, where are my people, kind of thing. And I think like since I was going to high school in the 2000s, and I think the Smashing Pumpkins were you know more like 90s zeitgeist. Like I felt like like right as I was getting into them, they're like, well, the band is ending, and I'm like, oh, what? you know?
Yeah.
And I'm glad the
Yeah.
band didn't end. They are continuing to make amazing music, which I'm very grateful for. Um, because even a band like Smashing Pumpkins, they're so they're well off to the point where they don't have to make this music anymore. So that's why all the new music I'm just so grateful for. And it just shows like the true artists are the ones that are still making it,
Sure.
even though they don't have to. They're set for life. They could just go relax somewhere and live off their royalties. They don't have to do this, but the fact that they are putting in all the work and still doing all that they do and doing tours and uh, putting in all that effort, that just says a lot to true artistry, and that's something to admire. But yeah, like bands like My Bloody Valentine, like shoegaze, like I still get a lot of inspiration for that. I think some people have said my stuff's like kind of like dark shoegazy, but I feel like I like that range and variety. Like even like a lot of metal music, like Love Death
Hmm.
Clock and stuff like that. And but I like the range to where everything doesn't have to be heavy, but it
Right.
can get really heavy. But
Yeah.
then everything doesn't have to be la la la. I don't like,
Right. Right.
I don't want to get like um pigeonholed, and
Yes.
feel like everything has to sound like something. And there are those people that are like want their bands to keep repeating the same album. But what I admire most about the Smashing Pumpkins is they're like, no, we're gonna do what we creatively feel, and that's what we're gonna put out. So we don't care what some
Yes.
dude says. Like they're not gonna
Right.
make 500 Siamese Dream albums, and I'm glad they didn't because there's only one Siamese Dream, there's only one Machina, there's only one Melancholy, and it's like if they kept just redoing the same thing, then those same people would say, "Oh, it's not the same," or whatever they say. Um, but yeah, I think we share a lot of the same influences. So, what would you say your main influences are?
Well, definitely Smashing Pumpkins for sure. That's undeniable. They have all of those elements that I feel um, every great band needs. They have the angst, yet they have the softness. They have all the black and the white and the grays in between. So for me, that was immediate when I was a young child. And when they came around in my life, I needed them the most. And so when I talk about the Smashing Pumpkins, which I don't really talk about them very much, unless in like a setting like this or with somebody I know, like yourself. But I'm so much of a Smashing Pumpkins fan that sometimes a lot of people don't really realize that or know that, because it's not something I just talk about so much. And for a reason of um, really more so because it was so meaningful to me in a point in my life when, like I said, I needed them the most. Growing up, without a father, and just kind of being around a lot of the abuse that I saw as a child, I needed something to latch onto that I saw that was essentially good and that was possible. And so, definitely, Smashing Pumpkins, Billy Corgan has provided that for me for sure. Not that I would ever admit that, but that is the truth. I'm admitting it now. Is I've been such a Smashing Pumpkins fan all my life. I've been with them on the rises and the falls and in the in betweens, and which I think a fan should be um, along for the journey. Um, so definitely, I think Billy Corgan's probably one of the greatest songwriters of our generation for sure. A unique voice in every sense of the way, a complete maverick. um, does things by his own, want and need, and doesn't play ball. And I think that's why, you and I have talked about this before. I think that's why we're seeing, they haven't been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not that that would mean anything anyway, really, because it's just like some kind of like a status thing. But to me, that's what makes them key and essential to what they're doing because they're still putting out music at the caliber that they're putting music out. They're still just fundamentally important to not only just the genre of alternative and rock music, but just creating and music and general expression. Um, so I think it really calls to the fact of how influential they are and how can I say more just doing things on their own terms shows a lot of why they're not accepted in certain realms. Like say like a Rolling Stone or like a some kind of corporate meaningless thing. So I really love that about them because they've achieved such huge success, all while still maintaining some kind of like core base that a lot of bands don't have at that success. Um, so yeah, definitely Smashing Pumpkins. Along with that, Nine Inch Nails. I've been a huge Nine Inch Nails fan. The Cure. I love David Bowie. I've always talked about David Bowie being kind of like the start of where a lot of alternative music kind of came about in terms of what was possible and kind of seeing this artist as like a character from another world and seeing that you're not just like a guy with a guitar or a voice, that you can be this thing, whatever you want to be. And that's kind of what creating is all about. I've always gravitated towards artists that seem as though whether they had a band or not, they were always going to make it. Like they were the spearheads of the operation. And I've obviously always thought Billy Corgan was that. I always viewed Trent Reznor that way. Like regardless of what was happening, the music was going to come out. Robert Smith, obviously. Um, I've always really enjoyed artists who sound like they come from another world. Like it's like you hear the music and it's like it exists
Yeah.
on its own planet somewhere because it's so unique to them. Um, and I think all those great bands, like a Smashing Pumpkins or The Cure, they individually have their own style. So it's like, Jimmy Chamberlain. You hear 2 seconds of a drum line, it's Jimmy Chamberlain. And you can kind of go all the way into, voices, Robert Smith. You hear just a snippet, who it is. You can kind of put, a silhouette of these people on the wall, you know who they are. They're living legends in a lot of ways. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for those type of artists. Along with it, yes, Joy Division, highly important. A lot of '80s English new wave bands. A lot of people don't know. I grew up very very young, listening to a lot of like R&B and like soul and kind of music that was coming out of the like the disco era. So kind of like early hip hop, Sugar Hill Gang and all that kind of stuff. My mother watched a lot of Soul Train when I was a child, so I heard a lot of that music. That's why I really was into like the Jackson Five, Michael Jackson. I have like all their records. Prince. I'm a huge Prince fan. Um, my brother showed me a lot of early hip hop, Curtis Blow, Run DMC, um, even onto the first very start emergence of NWA, the gangster rap, group, which by and large I think is the rap version of the Beatles, because when they came onto the scene, they just changed the game. A lot of people don't recognize that with my music that I make now, but that was some of the early music that I heard. And then an uncle of mine got me more into like The Cure and more alternative music. So I had a fusion going on. And most of the music that I make today doesn't sound anything, I don't think, like that soul kind of sound or hip hop sound. Sometimes I kind of like, just by the nature of the electronic beats that go along with like um alternative and new wave music, sometimes I get like a little bit of a flavor of like breakdancing style beats because I love breakdancing culture as well. um but yeah, those are a lot of my influences. Kind of comes pretty broad, but I think back to what you were saying, earlier is that you do have to have an open palette, an open mind, and I think that's what music teaches us. Is that once you do that, you're more accepting to, you know, inviting new ideas. Music teaches us how to be that in life, to just listen, give it time, be open. Um, so yeah, I'm really I don't know. I guess I can go on and on about a lot of different bands, but yeah, pretty similar to what you're into.
Yeah, and I feel like some artists like I just wasn't exposed to at a younger age that I'm now just discovering, like artists that you know, I knew of David Bowie, but I didn't know of everything he
Hmm.
did. So I feel like I'm kind of rediscovering it. And I went to a lot of flea markets this summer and got a lot of vinyl. So I
Nice.
got some definitely some Bowie, and it's like, yeah, you're kind of discovering it. It's like I missed it during its time. And yeah, of all the artistry that David Bowie did put in. And I like the kind of element of having this like visual art, but also be embodied in you, like you're that character. And yeah, there's a lot of artists that have done that. And no, and it's really cool in a sense, but some people can't separate the artist from the character that they are
Oh
playing.
yeah.
Um, but that's just, how
And
people
sometimes I
are.
think the Yeah, and sometimes I think the artists can't separate themselves from what they've created. I know that happens quite a bit, in not just music, but lots of things involving entertainment where, um, which is why I really appreciate, that Billy Corgan has been able to navigate through that whole stardom and becoming this larger than life, rock god, so to speak, and kind of coming back down to earth, kind of let everybody know, like, yeah, I bleed, I feel, I create other things more than music. I created a family, I'm a person. So for me, when I see stuff like that, that just makes me respect the artist even more. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about when somebody hears your music and they almost want you to be this type of character that they think of, that they've kind of created around you. Um, but I am the type of person that definitely gives more of a nod to an artist that can kind of just bring everything back and kind of show people like that they're real. Because to me, that's more tangible, more believable. That there is an artist out there that's just a person and not just this whatever culture has created around them or that they've created themselves. That they're they're much more than that. And I think, like artists like that, like a Billy Corgan or Smashing Pumpkins or any of those artists that are still creating music at that level today, having been in it, 30, 40 plus years, 50 years in some cases, um, that their best is yet to come.
Yeah.
I really truly believe that, that we, a lot of fans, that call themselves fans, they kind of latch onto a piece of music from the past that is astronomically astronomically great. I'm not taking that away. I mean, there's a reason why melancholy is what it is because it had to be made, right? Like I think you would agree that that body of work had to be created. Like it
Oh
was
yeah.
just it was in the ethers and it was supposed to happen. And I think we feel that when we hear that those particular songs and that piece of music. But it's hard for fans to get past those things and to kind of look at it like each album that comes in is kind of like, well, and you've heard me say this before, it may not be my favorite, but it might just be hitting me at a certain time in my life where I'm just not able to receive it. And I think it's really important as fans to be fans. It's kind of like a fan of a team. You're there for the high points, and you're there for the low points. You're there for the journey. And I think that artists like that continue to make music on that level, um, are we have yet to see really what they're truly capable of.
Yeah, and I think it's good to like revisit things that you heard at a younger age and then you revisit it as an adult and you're like, okay, I may be more um in the headspace to receive this now. Um
Hmm.
and my favorite Cure album is an album that is not a fan favorite. A lot of the fans hate the album, and it's the Cure self-titled album.
Yes.
And I feel the depth of that album, but I talk to a lot of Cure fans and they act like it's garbage. And I'm like, Robert Smith made that album and titled it The Cure. The Cure. Like,
Right.
he's an artist. He knows what he's doing. He's being intentional. Like, and I feel like a lot of artists, especially bigger artists, have, written stuff to, oh, we have to write something for people to dance to. We have to write something for this and that. And this album doesn't have any songs like Love Cats, where he wrote that kind of as like a joke, that
Hmm.
that kind
Hmm.
of thing. And this song is just the whole album is so deep. Like, listen to the lyrics, like, feel the album. Like, it starts out with him saying like, I lost myself. And it just immediately grabs me and it like pulls me into this kind of well. And if you really listen to the lyrics, and yeah, some of the songs, yeah, are just really deep. And I feel like some people are like, well, can't really dance to any of these songs or bop around, or it's not fun to drive around to, and that's not really the point. And um I think every band has an album like that where their core fans just didn't get it. And there's some Smashing Pumpkins records that are, like monuments to an elegy that came out during a really difficult time in my life. And when you really like listen to it, there's some really, really good songs on there. And a lot of fans aren't into it. I'm like, there's some really great songs on there. Like, all right, you're missing out. Like,
Yeah, it's
so
it's that thing. It's that thing where it's like just being willing to accept new ideas and new things. I don't know if that's like a personality thing, but yeah, and it certainly doesn't help the fact that like the majority of people now get their music, on streaming platforms where they're going to suggest every time the most well-known song.
yeah.
And I've always been the listener that's like, I want to hear all those in between songs I've never heard before. It's like the same thing happened with Simple Minds. I because I love Simple Minds, the '80s band, and um, when you put them on Spotify, like sometimes even in some cases back to back, they'll recommend "Don't You Forget About Me," which is like their most well-known song, which they didn't even write. Um, but you listen to their albums, Sparkle in the Rain, one of the greatest albums I think during that era, has so many wonderful pieces of music on it that not a lot of people know about because, unless you've been a fan for a long time or you just so happen to stumble across the album or the songs. But, you know, platforms are geared now, I guess, just through algorithm, just to give you every single song that everybody knows. And I don't know, I would like to think that would change. Like in Drown, like Smashing Pumpkins, they cut off the last piece of it. I'm like, why would you cut off all that beautiful symphonic feedback from the guitars? You cut that off. That's a key part of the song. So it's stuff like that kind of drives me crazy when we're talking about streaming platforms and algorithms. But
Oh yeah, that you bring that up, that now a lot of songs, like, if they're over a certain length, that they
Yeah.
are, not, you're like, oh, well, you're not going to get the recommendations. They're not going to recommend this 10-minute song. They want this song to be 3 minutes or less. And some songs are like, they're like, oh, well, think about this in like a reel or a TikTok. You want it to be like 30 seconds. And I feel people's attention spans are just getting smaller and smaller and smaller to where we're conditioned to like make a decision whether we like something or not within a fraction of a second, not even a second now. It's like swipe, swipe, swipe. People are swiping things and it's kind of insane. Like, some songs, you know, were much longer, like a lot of rock ballads. Like,
Hmm.
think of Bohemian Rhapsody. It's like, would people even listen to the apex of that song now if it came out
Yeah.
today's day and age?
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of a record, I think, and I know you find that uh, that as well, where I really enjoy listening to records because it forces you to listen to the context of the actual body of work. I've actually uh, been more of a fan of a song that I didn't really care for in the beginning. And when I heard it in the rotation of the album, it made more sense, and it gave new meaning to that song that I was kind of just like about. Um,
What song was
so
it?
that is not anything that I can think of like in terms of a band, but just as an example of like where sometimes you'll hear a song and it doesn't strike you immediately, but if you hear it in the whole body in the context of the album, it's kind of like, oh,
Oh
it's
yeah.
part of the story of the album. So now that song makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and I know a lot of people release singles now because that's kind of like, the way to do it, or that seems to be more the mode. I don't know if a lot of people, seems like a lot of people aren't really interested in like conceptual albums. Those have always been my favorite. As you know, Smashing Pumpkins have been just instrumental in creating some of the best, concept albums of all time. I think they're important. I just don't know if people have the patience to deal with that. The wanting to feel on those terms anymore. I hope that they do, but um, maybe that's yet another thing that'll kind of come around full circle.
Yeah, hopefully people have like a yearning for that and, wanting
That depth,
something
right?
real. Yeah, yeah, like some kind of revival, some kind of renaissance to where um we want a reconnection. And even with mental health being at the forefront now, more people talk about mental health than ever and talking about grounding and, you know, because with this digital world, it's so fast, so much thrown at you, and sometimes you go on social media and you feel like your brain just got scrambled and you're scattered everywhere, and you're like, well, what was I thinking about? What was I doing? I don't know. But and these ads are everywhere. So it's like going back to I feel like with mental health, it's like if I'm listening to an album, on my phone, you know, things are still popping up even if you put it on do not disturb or something like that. It's like there's still that temptation to just click on this app or check your email or something.
Sure.
It's like, but if you're in
Yeah.
an environment where you just can't do that and
Yeah.
you really do get detox and you really do get to quiet your mind. And I feel like there's so much that's intruding. Like, I feel like the world, like, has constant access to you from this telescreen box. And yes, I do call them telescreens because they are essentially telescreens that we pay for, but that's a whole nother topic of discussion. But yeah, it feels like you're always accessible. Like someone texts
Yes.
you, you don't text them right back. They're like, "Oh, did you die?"
Yeah.
you
Yeah. There's like
know?
this. There's this like weird obligation, right?
Yeah, and even with I understand the safety thing of like knowing where your kids are and stuff like that. But now it is like a tracking device. Like,
for sure.
you're expected to respond, like work's texting me or this person's texting me or um and they want this like immediate response. I'm like, well, hey, I'm enjoying my morning, like,
Yes.
and we're having to set more boundaries with that too. And even with but then the boundaries are almost getting you, you get consequences from those boundaries. Like some people don't want to hire you or work with you because you have these boundaries of like, hey, I used to work emergency internal medicine and veterinary care, and it was my hours were insane. And I was supposed to only work 4 10-hour shifts, and that never ever happened. It turned into 50, 60, yada, yada, yada plus hours, and it took over my life. And so when interviewing for like new jobs, I was very like, don't want to go over 40 hours. But then a lot of places were like, one literally said in an interview, well, you seem really concerned with a work-life balance. They were kind of saying it like it was a negative thing. I'm like, yeah, well, how am I gonna like treat a patient if I've been on the floor for like 15 hours? Like that's not
Mhm.
safe. Like if I haven't,
Yeah.
and you're going without breaks and I'm like, hey, I'm a human. I need to eat food. I need to rest. And I'm hoping our society's starting to wake up to that a little bit. And like I know another topic we want to talk about was self-care. And self-care as an artist, which I feel um, everybody needs self-care, but artists, I think it's on like kind of another level
Hmm.
because you're producing all this emotional stuff. Like a lot of my stuff takes me back through certain traumas or negative experiences in my life that I'm, exposing and talking about. So it can be a lot. And then also at my job, I deal with a lot of emotional situations.
Yeah.
Um, so when you're dealing with that on like two fronts, I feel like I do struggle with finding and taking time because I feel like every time I take time, then I'm taking time away from my creativity, away from my art. And it's hard
Sure.
to understand, like, oh, no, I just need time to just, what I say, be a potato,
Yeah.
like, do
No,
nothing.
you're absolutely right. I think they want us to be a robot. And when you recognize that, it's truly important for you to have that balance between work life and creative life, um, which is questionable to they and whoever they are, maybe employers or whomever. Um, you're it's just the recognition that people that aren't like that don't want to cow down to just being a robot, are extremely powerful. You know, people who question things and people who kind of like, step outside the box, such as an artist, that can say, hey, I absolutely want to do this job 100%. However, I do need a side of myself that is important, key, and essential to me. Can we work that out? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but um, most, employers or back to society doesn't see it that way. I think that starts at an early age too. Like, I mean, sometimes even in the schools, I know like they kind of want the kids to kind of be that robot. And of course, I understand there's a lot of things in school that they do that are beneficial to teach kids, like waking up at a certain time, being responsible to be at a place at a certain time, those key essentials. But to make somebody believe or think that that's all you are and that's all you're ever going to be, all while trying to convince you that you need to reconcile some kind of happiness within that. I think there's definitely something weird and wrong about that for sure.
Yeah, and even when I was growing up, a lot of it was, it's like I loved music and I wanted to have this certain relationship with it, but I felt like it got latched onto this perfectionism, and
Hmm.
it pushed me away from it because I felt like I was never good enough. I'm like, well, if I can't play this particular piece the way it's supposed to be played and performed, then I'm not a musician. And that damaged me for a while. And I think, yeah, you have to be encouraged to be creative. And yeah, you're still just as much as a musician as someone else. It's like if someone's playing Paganini and, you know, you can't play Paganini, or you just aren't interested in doing that. You're interested in
Yeah,
making your own voice and your own music, and, to the beat of your own drum,
for
and
sure.
but that's not what is accepted as success. It's like, oh, you have to hit this target. This is what
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
to do.
Hmm.
And, it's not like, a race or, a
Well,
competition.
yeah, it kind of feels like it's a constant, like, um, it's like this feeling of like conforming in a way, and to people who don't, you know, agree with that, or that's not their nature, it's going to be a problem. You know, I know me for sure. I don't like being told that I have to do something. And I can imagine you're probably very much the same way. I can agree to do something, be asked to do something, know that just upon my own awareness, self awareness, that it's important to do. But the minute I'm made to feel like I have to do it, there's no other option, then I really start questioning a whole lot of it. It's usually a snowball effect that happens for me after that.
Yeah, and even when I was in orchestra, it was like they would have you compete for chairs and things like that. And, you know, it's like you get all, drawn up into it when you're in it. But when you get out of it, you're like, well, I could just play my instrument and make music and be a musician. I don't have to like play exactly what's written on a page
Right. Right.
and be part of a big machine. And it is kind of cool doing that in an orchestra. I'm not discrediting that in any way. um but it has to be what fuels you, and that fuels
For
some
sure.
people. But for me, I just feel like I have a lot to say, like, on my own.
Hmm.
And that's just, I feel like it needs to be said and needs to be out there. And if no one's listening, then oh well, I still have it.
Yeah,
No one takes
absolutely.
it away from you. You did it. Like it doesn't go away. But if you never do it, like that stems back to like, you being who you are. And when, I always regret not doing my art, or whatever was stopping me from doing my art, like either a life situation or just myself, when I just didn't have the confidence, mad imposter syndrome. And that's what I regret. I've never have I ever regretted like making or pursuing a creative thing, even if it didn't come out the way that I thought it would come out. It's still, I did it. I got to the finish line. And I was having a conversation earlier this week about like getting stuck when you're in the creative process. And I used to get stuck. I used to get like stuck in the middle of a song, couldn't finish it. And what I had to start doing is just like, let go and not be such a perfectionist, and just finish it, even if it wasn't aligned with what I thought it was supposed to say or what I thought it was supposed to sound like. Just finish it. Like you're taking a test, it's a quiz, you know, you have to write down something for points. Write down something,
Yeah.
because if you write down nothing, you get no points. But if you write down something, then, you may get something out of it. And just knowing that I could always go back and tweak it. But I usually don't go back and rewrite it. Usually what I wrote in the moment is pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you do little tweaks here and there, but I've never like, if I write a song in an hour, I usually, even if I flesh it out, I usually stay with that same foundation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've known each other for, I want to say, almost 3 years now, I think.
Yeah, I was going through because I was like, feels like I've just known Jamie. I'm like, wait, how did we start to know each other? And I went back through our like DMs, and I think it was like started with us liking each other's stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then here I think I took like a screenshot of it to be like, okay. And that was like back in December of 21. And then
Oh, nice. Okay.
October of 22, then we started talking of like, oh, I was awesome. You have a great sound. And you were like, thank you. And you're like, oh, I've been noticing your music. And then we started talking about collabing, but then we both, you were saying you had crazy things going on in your life, and we both did. And then it kind of, just developed from there. And now I'm like, oh, hey, it's, more than 2 years later. And I was like, well, yeah, I was thinking, like, yeah, how did that start? I just feel like we just knew each other.
Yeah, we I think we became followers of each other on Instagram. I know that when I released Blood on the Ivy, um, the single, I I worked with Excuse to Enjoy. So
Yeah.
her name is Diana, and she was putting out a lot of really cool um videos
Yeah.
all around Smashing Pumpkins because she's,
Yeah.
obviously a very big Smashing Pumpkins fan. So I was looking at some of her like, artwork that she was putting together for videos, and I was like, this is amazing. And I kind of had this idea, which again, it's gonna sound silly, but there's a lot of instances in my life where I do definitely believe in manifestation. I know it's like the typical thing to talk about these days, but I really do. And that was one of the instances where, we kind of just same thing. Like I started following her because I liked her work, and then she started following me, and we were like kind of following each other for a while before I actually decided to reach out to her on a whim. And I was just like, um, this is gonna sound crazy. I know you don't know me, but I'm making a song that I really believe in, and I would really like if you can put something together for me, if you'd be willing to do that. And she got back to me right away, and she was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, that's it." So it was pretty easy. And then we exchanged numbers, so we talked on the phone, and I was telling her my ideas, and she was really, nice enough to put something together for me, which was just, I thought, came out phenomenal and beautiful. And she was like asking me, well, how do you want it to go? And I'm like, I want you to listen to the song. And as the artist, the visual artist, I want you to kind of put something together. Like I have my own ideas too. It's kind of like very much like how you and I have collaborated on the
Oh yeah.
Tourmalines like ideas, where I'm like, I do have some ideas, but it's really more of like, how do you really feel the direction of the song is what it's telling you? She was like, okay, I mean, but it may not be something that you like, and I'm like, that's fine. If we get to that road, I'll be, honest enough with you to tell you, but basically I just trust you. And I did. I trusted her, and in that process. And she came out with a really beautiful video. And I think during that she was a part of like a Smashing Pumpkins like group
Oh yeah.
or like fan base. And she was just through the process of like us finishing up that project and sharing the video. I think I got some fans of hers or followers of hers, I should say. And kind of like liking my stuff because they were like, oh, here's some other music that's kind of Smashing Pumpkins ish or alternative ish. Um, and so I think that's how you and I might have uh, started like following each other on Instagram. I think. Um, but no, started paying attention to the stuff that you were doing, um, and recognized immediately that you were the kind of person that, like I said before, you work really hard um, to do what you love. And when we started talking about collaborating, I was like, there really isn't anybody that I can think of that I would actually really want to collaborate with. I mean, there's people that like, yeah, I could collaborate with them and I think it would be amazing. But like as of this moment, who would I really put forth the actual effort to collaborate with and
Yeah.
see it to completion? And I know it's taken a while for us to actually make that happen, but I'm pretty grateful in that. I'm pretty happy that um, even though it's taken a long time because life gets in the way and you're in Cleveland, and I'm over here in California, it makes things a little challenging. But I'm glad that we're at this point where we're actually just about to release the song, finishing it up, and then having other ideas in the future to, kind of collaborate on. And so really it wasn't a hard decision to try to work with you. And then when Tourmaline Rings came out, when that came around, it was one of those songs that just kind of just came in. And you know I was in my hometown, and I was watching they have like this historic bowl, like an amphitheater that they have there in the city, and they put on like all these free plays and stuff, so people will like actually perform like symphonic music. It'll be like theater, all kinds of really fun stuff that you can just kind of go and check out. And it's been there since I was a child, so I brought my kids there, my family there, and immediately out of the blue, in between, like I think we were waiting for the show to start, I just had this idea. Um, I could hear everything, the melody, the lyrics, the guitar. So I stepped away and I told my wife, she's very familiar with this, process that I have, where I'm like, I have to drop everything right now. I have to walk away and start recording this on my phone or else it's gone. I just felt really compelled. So it happened immediately. I went home, wrote it down really, really quickly. And the song was based around, I didn't know it at the time. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier, how you start like writing lyrics and then, everything's flowing, but then you never really truly understand what it means at the moment until you go back and look at it. And you're
Yeah.
kind of like, whoa, I didn't know I felt that way. I lost my brother 2018, and he was one of the more obviously more influential people in my life personally, but was a he was a lot of things. He was like my brother and my father and my best friend all at the same time because obviously I didn't have a father, but he was a great supporter of everything that I did. And so when I was writing the song, it kind of hatched around the idea that I didn't know at the time, but it was more like I was talking to him. Today I swore I saw you. It must have been the air, was kind of like that line for me was kind of like the feeling of a spirit. Um, and then also like, um, just the process of witnessing how he left this world was very tattered and torn, much like a weathered piece of fabric. I felt like I was really talking about that in the song. Um, the nails I saw them give you was more of a reference to like kind of being crucified, kind of going through so much in one's life that I saw like my brother in the same way that he had sacrificed so much and gave so much only to eventually have his life end in the way that it did. And I'm in a lot of ways grateful that it was in a very natural way. So it wasn't anything that was like you know, crazy, like traumatic, as though like somebody took him. But there was certainly a lot of times where it could have been avoided. I think in my brother's case, and so that's really where the song came from. It's a lot of sacrifice and recognition of damage that has been done along the way. Also, with some kind of healing feelings involved in the song. Um, Always that kind of like light at the end of the tunnel vibe. And you were the one that really suggested, making it more of the way that it is now, like with, strings. And because initially I had the song and I was like, yeah, I could sing it, but I don't hear it that way. Like I could do it, but it didn't make much sense to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, Judy and I have been talking about a collaboration. This is perfect. I wonder if she'd be interested in like sing on this song. I'm really proud of it. I think it came out really, really beautiful. Your instrumentation and your arrangements that you helped me on were key, I think. And there really wasn't too many things that I think that we changed initially, but I know we went through in the beginning. You suggested like putting a solo in the beginning, and which was great because that's something I hadn't really thought about. So just your input alone helped make the song what it is. And yeah, you did a phenomenal job all the way, just being totally involved in the process. So I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you inviting me to do it. Like at the time, no other artists had really officially asked me to collab. People throw collabs around like, oh yeah, we should collab, but then they never do things. And I'm like, all right, well, send me something, and then they don't follow up on it. So, um, yeah, when because uh, you had sent me everything, and then I learned to play it on guitar just to feel it out, and then the first thing I heard was like um mayonnaise vibes from Siamese Dream. That was really what
Hmm.
first clicked. And we're both Smashing Pumpkins fans, and even if you're not intentionally trying to be influenced by something, I
Sure.
still feel like you are what you eat. And you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
but the amount of Smashing Pumpkins we've ingested, it's like Smashing Pumpkins vibes are just gonna come out. And
Yeah.
when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, like I was playing that guitar part over and over, and then I just immediately started um working on like a I felt it needed that like intro solo to kind of like get into that mood, into that vibe. Like I felt it really would benefit from that. And I think it did turn out really great,
Yeah.
and it really is like a true collaboration. Um and it just worked really well together. We weren't like arguing over anything, and it just kind of happened.
Yeah, I felt it was true collaboration because we gave our inputs and our ideas. We certainly weren't afraid to tell each other, like at times, like, well, I don't know, I was thinking this, or I don't know if that would work. Maybe we can try it. It goes back to, you know, what we were talking about before, where it's like you just have to be open. And I think that through the process of committing and collaborating together, we clearly see that as long as we are willing to take the time and voice our opinions in a way that is truly respectful to each other as artists and our own input and vision that we have, anything's possible, really. I mean,
Yeah.
we can do that in just common conversation, and I hope that more people choose to do that. I'm certainly not going to say that I'm perfect through the process of this because I have my own problems as well. But by saying so, I would say that if we can just do that more as people, just to hear each other out and work through whatever. That doesn't mean that your idea is better than mine or my idea is better than yours. It's just that we can kind of talk about it, come up with a solid middle ground. I think that that's what we did,
Yeah.
and I think it's even better than that. I think it came out to be more than I anticipated that it could be. So I really appreciate your effort around it and just the back and forth and communication. And it's going to be exciting. I'm excited to do that. Now I know I'd heard a lot of your uh like your more acousticy kind of more stripped down songs
Oh yeah.
early on. Um when you came out with Misfit Toy Box, I really felt like you hit a certain type of a peak in terms of the sound, the vibe, the structuring of the song, the sonics involved in the recording. So that's probably one of my favorite pieces that you've ever done. I just think it came out perfect.
Well, thank
Um,
you.
so
I've got
that's one that I definitely have that on my playlist all the time. I love a lot of your songs. That one definitely stands out to me as like the kind of hallmark, Glass Arrows Judy sound. I really think you hit some kind of a stride on that one.
yeah, and the songs I did before, those were like the first songs I'd ever written, and I feel like Misfit Toy Box, I like worked with the studio, so I kind of get to up everything up the production and um that whole song kind of like it was a song I wrote, it was like a one-off and I had had like the songs for my album basically written even at that point and I'm like, well, I feel like a lot of studios suggest that you do a single first to see if you like working with them, if you like the process to learn everything. So that was kind of like a learning curve. So it's kind of like a predecessor of all the things I do have to come. I'm in talks with the same studio. They actually just are in the process of reopening at a new location. So it's taken a while, and I've been bugging them all year. And so it's August now and almost September, and we are, I sent them my demos, and so we're working on getting recording process finalized. So I feel like I'm about to embark on this like huge project, and it's like exciting but really scary at the same point because you have these songs and they're in you and you have them written, but then you're also like worried like, okay, how is this gonna manifest in the real world? It's like this is your little child and then now it's gonna go out into the world and you just have to see what it becomes. And we were talking about the creative vision thing and um so I feel like, yeah, you have to work with someone or a studio or a group that's going to enhance your creative vision. And I feel like we really enhanced each other's creative vision. I don't even think it was really a middle ground. I think we were just enhancing it. We weren't really compromising anything anywhere. It wasn't like, oh, I don't have a list of things I didn't get my way. I felt like everything just got layered and I sent you all those different vocal takes of different things and you turned that into something that was like so beautiful. I couldn't even imagine it even sounding that great. So that was just like, whoa, like how did what
Thank
I
you.
gave you turn into that? Like I don't even know how and it just sounds so angelic. Like once the song gets like really going, it turns into this angelic thing and it's almost like, oh my God, like that's me. Like, um
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I knew we had something when, you sent me the initial vocal tracks. And then when I want to say, I think you sent me the main vocals and then the harmonies or the backgrounds in the same file, um, or in the same set of files. But I hadn't yet gotten to the background. I hadn't really dissected those yet. I started with the because I can overwhelm myself very, very quickly. I tend to work backwards when I'm like mixing and stuff, which I really need to figure out because my brain is like, scrambled around sometimes when it comes to like all this information and ideas. It's really hard for me to like get a clear path. Once I get moving forward, then it's good. But in the initial stages, I recognize right away. I'm like, okay, let me start with this because if I start opening everything all at once, I'm going to get overwhelmed and it's just not going to work out. So I heard your main vocals and I was like, this is great. And I was hearing before I heard the harmonies and your background vocals that you added, I was hearing those already. And so when I actually got to them, it was like goosebumps. I was like, okay, perfect. She understands. She gets it. She did it. I didn't even have to tell her. She like got it, and it was awesome. That's what let me know. I was like, this is perfect. This is meant to be. So
Yeah, where you're in the same creative vein, you have the same process and the processes work together. Like, and that's rare. That doesn't happen with a lot of musicians. A lot of musicians are just clashing and don't work together and are constantly butting heads. Oh, this needs to happen, or that needs to happen. And that's kind of the classic trope that's in music of, oh, they were fighting over this. And it came with a lot of great tension, and a lot of bands are like that. And yeah, and even, I've worked with a lot of musicians, and sometimes it's like they're like, "Well, don't do it that way. Do it this," or "Oh, you should." I've been told, "Oh, you shouldn't play guitar. You should just sing," or something like that. It's like, no, I'm gonna do what I feel like I need to do, and yeah. So I felt like I worked very hard on those vocals. Did a lot of takes, a lot of um different experiments with that to really feel like I got it. Like I tried different mics. There were some takes of
mhm.
different, that I
Yeah,
tried different mics to just try to capture different sounds. And so I gave you all the options. I'm like, here, you can pick what's gonna work best with, your vision. Um I in the way I work, I'll just kind of throw out all the possibilities and then edit down. That's usually
yeah,
how I work of like I'll add this and that, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if it works, hey, we tried it, and that's
yeah,
because I feel like a lot of creative stuff, it's like even when I was in art school, one of my teachers said, well, when you draw an idea, well, then draw it 30 more times. Like,
yeah, yeah.
because then you don't know from those 30 times, oh, what if time number 27, that's it. Like you
Hmm.
started at this 0, and then you don't know where along the lines, you know, what if it's time number 13 is the best, but then you have something to gauge it off of,
Yes. Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah, it's really important to throw things at the wall to see what sticks
yeah.
because you just never know. Um, yeah. So I definitely feel the same way. Um, so was like as far as where you heard my music, was Blood on the Ivy the very first thing that you heard from me, or was it something different? Or do you remember that at all?
I don't know if I remember the specific song. I think it was either Blood on the Ivy or right meow.
Mhm.
Right meow. Like,
Which is my daughter. She sang that part.
oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
again, I heard the voice and I was like, I'm pretty sure I can do that and manipulate it that way, but I hear her voice in it. So it's like
yeah.
it's perfect. But yeah,
Yeah, so I think those were the first.
the first two.
Yeah, I think those were the first. And because I've listened to so much since then, I'm trying to think like, okay, what was the exact
Yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you've come out with so much since then, and I've just watched you grow, and it's been amazing. And I really haven't, I feel like I haven't been putting a lot of music out. I've been kind of, everything's just getting, um, I'm trying to do like a much bigger project because I'm crazy. Um, I kind of almost get sick of it. I'm like, yeah, this is all I have right now on Spotify, and I feel like it's not representative of what I do, but I'm working on hopefully, hopefully by next year starting to release some stuff. And yeah, and I really admire that you do everything like DIY. Like I'm kind of waiting on a studio, um and to do it. And I don't know, but if I could do it myself, I don't know, I might be crippled by my perfectionism and imposter syndrome and not be able to get anything.
The hardest part. And when I'm in the studio working and I'm creating, it's really difficult because like I have to be the producer, the musician, the writer, the engineer, the mixer, the mastering. It becomes very difficult to separate those positions at once. So
Yeah,
like in
especially
my
being a producer.
yeah, so in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna sit down and mix the song. But then quickly the engineer comes in and goes, well, maybe you should re-record the guitar with this microphone instead of using the, Shure SM57, use the condenser microphone. And I'm like, just stay out of it. Let me mix, please.
You should
Let me focus.
re-record,
Let me fix
re-record.
this first, and then you can come in and listen to what we have. And if we have to do, it's so weird because it is like multiple personalities sitting in the same room, and it becomes really hard to just focus on that one thing. But I guess I suppose that's the part about it that I like, though. I like going down the rabbit hole and really digging deep and getting involved that way, as confusing as and conflicting as it can be sometimes. Uh-oh, my smoke alarm. Sorry about that. Speaking of which, sorry, Judy.
Oh.
My candle out and it's like smoking everywhere.
Oh
Hang on,
no.
okay? I swear nothing's burning down.
Don't don't burn the studio down.
Hang on. Hang on a second, okay?
Okay.
Oh, there it goes. All right. Hang on. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
At least it works. Okay. So it's like on its last leg and it like got down to like the glass. It's burning hot. Hang on.
Oh, is it just burning the wick?
Yeah. Don't touch this. It's really hot. All right. Sorry about that. We could either leave that in or edit it. See. But
Jamie almost
everything's
burned down his house for the
everything's
sake
good, I swear.
of this. Almost burning down the house.
Oh no, I'm like nothing else is burning. No, that's what it was. Like my smoke detector's like right below the candle. Go figure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have any
Above the
smoke
candle.
detectors in my studio just because I'll sometimes burn candles or incense. Like we have one in the hallway and other places, but
Yeah.
just not in my
And
studio.
to be fair, these ones we have are like super sensitive, so it's like it does become annoying. Like my wife will be cooking and like not burning anything. Like,
Mm.
she'll throw like a little bit of butter in the pan and then all of a sudden it like sparks up and you're just like, oh my God. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Where did we leave off? Was it
Burning down the house. We're talking about
oh,
working together well.
talking heads.
Yeah, talking head. No, we're talking about just like you were talking about like producing your own work and being
Yeah, yeah,
multiple
yeah,
people and like when I started, I was starting during the pandemic when I started like seriously recording my stuff because I had worked with people that weren't good to work with, and it kind of when you work with people that aren't good for you to work with, then you almost get very deterred and you almost have a bit of PTSD from that because you're being told, oh, this isn't good enough, that's not good enough. And I felt like everything I did wasn't good enough. And so I was working with the wrong people in the sense, and then I had to kind of work by myself, kind of get through it. And but then I just realized I'm like, just at this point in my life, I feel like I just need to get stuff out, and I just, and it's good to have a second set of ears. And if you find people that are good to work with, then that's like beneficial to you and it's a learning process instead of people that aren't good for you to work with, then goes in the opposite direction. But I feel like I found people that are good to work with and professional and wanting to produce something good in quality instead of just hit record and be like, yep, yep, we're just getting it out. I'm like someone that's like wants to do the project and to execute the vision. And so, yeah, and that's like, and I'll learn from other people. So finding people that are good to work with and also being able to just learn from them and learn the process. I feel like that's what I'm embarking on. So, I'm excited about it, but you wish you can do everything yourself, and I wish I could, um, because you feel that like freedom. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I do need the full studio experience, so I'm gonna go that route, and then who knows where I'm gonna go from there. I have like, yeah, like we were saying before, we both have these like song vaults, and I have a lot of songs that um I even know like the next 2 to 3 albums, kind of what songs are gonna be on that. I'm already so backed up to that point. So yeah, I feel like getting this first album out. I think once you get like one album out, then the next, it's like the process. It's a little easier. But I think the first one, you're like, oh, it's the first one. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, definitely.
diving off that diving board and getting in the water kind of thing. You're still looking at the distance. You're like, oh, I don't know. And I have, when I was a little apprehensive to even send my demos to the studio because a lot of them are very rough, and I've been focusing a lot more on just the songwriting versus the quality of the recording. Because I feel like
Hmm.
if I get obsessed over the quality of the recording, then sometimes I'm a little lost in the other areas and I want to kind of. And then when you perform it live, I've been performing a lot of stuff live, then you get another feel for it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then there's some
definitely.
some things you can do in the studio that you can't do live. So, um,
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely wonderful things about both, right? Like live and studio. Um, like a couple years ago when I did a couple of shows. One was at a local record store that we have in the mountains here. Hunky Dory Records are amazing, and the owner, Michael, he let me go up there and put on a show. Um, and that was again one of those instances where I was like, I saw this happening somehow, and it happened. So it was really nice to see that came to fruition. But along with that, I was getting all these like other offers, like, hey, can you play over here? Can you play over there? And it's like none of which I intended to do. It just started happening, and of course, I said yes to them. But I was like more busy with doing live shows than I initially wanted to, and you know this because you're like, I have this one set, and then you get an offer, and you're like, okay, well, I'll do this one, and then okay, well, I'll do that one. It just kind of happened that way, and so for that whole year I was pretty busy with doing live stuff. So I do enjoy doing live stuff. Um I really obviously love recording. It's just I really feel like that's where I can really put forth my magic making processes because you can really like turn the world upside down and reverse, and I love that. I love that. I wouldn't say I prefer one over the other by any means, but I definitely dive deep into recording. I think it's something that I could think about forever and ever and ever and never get tired of. So that's why when you have a question, the technical things, I'm like already in that mode, like
yeah.
24/7. So I don't mind at all. So speaking of which, I know we have our single coming out. I'm excited to get that out this next coming week. Along with that, what can like people expect from you heading into the end of the year and the early part of next year?
Oh, like, for my art? Or
Yeah, yeah. Like, what are
oh,
your plans and like for your music and what do you have on your plate?
I have a lot on my plate, actually. It's like an insane amount. So of course the album that I've been talking about, that's gonna be like a really big production because it's not gonna be, just the songs. It's going to be a lot of visual art going with
Hmm.
that, a lot of visual art, a lot of like costumes for live performance and music videos. So it's a very big and in-depth project. Um and I have other little side projects too going on. I do have my own fine art. I do classical work too. And I'm also still always working on new music. So I kind of test out new songs at open mic because I feel like I still need to like keep the creative tap going, even though I'm focusing on like 10 to 12 songs for the record and then also doing like live performances. I feel like going towards the end of the year, Halloween's like my big blowout. Like,
Hmm.
I have some live shows that are scheduled. Some that are scheduled and some that are still to be finalized, like having dates and concepts thrown around. Um and yeah, I also do a lot of stuff for Halloween just in general. I'd love to experience the season and being in Ohio. It's like you get the leaves, you get the fall, and I just can't wait. Um, I'm already
Ah,
feeling
I'm getting jealous.
you'll just have to come. You'll just have to
I
come and
know.
experience it.
Oh my
It
gosh, over here it's like, yeah, fall is my favorite, one of my favorite times of the year. I feel alive. I feel like myself. I absolutely can't stand summer like most everybody else around me. But I can only imagine. You get all like the beautiful like snow in the winter, and I
well,
would
not as
fair to
much
say
as
you
it used to.
I, I would fair to say you probably get all the seasons, right? Pretty
We
well.
do, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, winter has been more mild. Like, really,
Hmm.
I've been actually there's times where it's like I want it to snow, I want to go sledding, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then just I think last year the entire season, I think we got two snowfalls that were like notable. Like
Hmm.
otherwise, like we really haven't, and yeah, I was kind of disappointed, but I think it was supposed to be a milder winter. Anyways, I don't know, but I just the fall it's just, and I have lived outside of Ohio. I lived in Florida, and I can't live without the seasons. Like the seasons, it's such a transformative emotional process, and people are like, oh, they hate winter, but there's benefits in winter. It's
Yes.
you stay inside more, it's more introspective. You get things done if you're motivated, get things done that you normally wouldn't have time for. Like summer, I feel like I'm going out and putting myself out there. Gotta do this, gotta do that. It's warm out. I gotta do all these things. And then in winter, I'm like scale back. It's like, well, can't go do that, can't go do this.
Yeah.
Oh my just and if well, I'm an introvert, so it's like, oh
Same.
no, I can't go anywhere or do anything or, "Oh, this is canceled? Oh,
Hmm.
no, I'm just gonna stay inside with a nice warm cup of coffee," and I'm actually
Yep.
weird, I like shoveling snow, and I've had some
Hmm.
cool experiences, like, actually last year, one of the snowfalls that we actually had to shovel for, I was out shoveling snow, and the sun was setting and snow was still falling, and I thought it was gonna be a flock of Canadian geese. And then I looked up,
Hmm.
it wasn't. It was swans. White swans. And I never experienced it. I was like, "What is this?" I Canadian geese are all around where we are. I thought it was. And I looked up all white swans. I was like, "What?" And I tried to get it, of course, tried to get a picture and they flew like in a bee right over me. Tried to get a picture, couldn't, because it happened so fast. But it was like crazy. And I yeah, there's just these beautiful experiences, and I'm like, yeah, there are parts of winter that do suck, but there are parts of every single season that suck. It's like in the summer you get sunburn, you get heat
Yeah,
stroke, and then,
that's
you
true.
know,
That's true.
and yeah, in the winter sometimes like, oh, I have to go somewhere, but then a lot of times I'm just like, well, I can't get out of my driveway, so I'm not going.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it can be frustrating, but I feel like things do happen for a reason. I feel like you do need the introspective time. Like you can't always keep going and going and going. Um yeah, just for me and just my natural cycle, I feel like fall, it's like I'm so excited. It's such a great time. I just want to enjoy everything, these beautiful colors, and I like fall foods, and um you know, I just want to enjoy it, and I love Halloween because Halloween is the best holiday that I can go on forever. Um, I'm gonna start my
and I
TED
agree
talk
with you
now
110%.
about Halloween. Yeah, exactly, because I feel like it's just like the one time where you can dress up and be whatever, and you could be yourself. Like be whatever you dream up, and you're giving candy to people like freely and not expecting anything in return. You're just having fun, and it's not like a project. Like I feel like when Christmas comes, then there's all these expectations, and if things aren't perfect, then people are disappointed, and there's this disappointment to it. I'm like, I just want to dress up, get with my
Yeah,
friends, have
yeah,
fun, have some candy, like, put up cool decorations. Like, I don't know. I just, it's my holiday.
yeah. And I've always been the same way. I've always loved Halloween. Um, I have a lot of fond memories as a child of Halloween. That was the very first time I ever heard Nine Inch Nails was Halloween 1991. I was really young as a kid, and so that had a profound impact on me. But
Yeah, and I hear it in
yeah,
your song, the song you sent me. That song just makes me think of like going back to your childhood Halloween. And that's what I
oh,
got when I
thanks.
first listened to your song for our Halloween split. It just hit that immediately. Like I felt like, oh, this is, you're just feeling all the feelings you had as a kid and Halloween, like this rediscovery. That
Hmm.
element really, I got that right away. I'm like, oh, this feels like this is rediscovery of Halloween, and it just going back to that feeling. And I feel like every Halloween I'm kind of chasing that feeling, but I'm also trying to now as the adult provide that for
Yeah,
others. And
yeah.
not just necessarily children, but also adults, like experience the magic of Halloween no matter what age you are. And I don't agree with like uh, turning away anyone based upon their age for trick or treating. I'm like, if you're 90 years old and you come to my house to say trick or treat, you're gonna get whatever you want.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm not going to discriminate. I think it's for everyone, and I want people to feel the magic. That's why I put up all this decor, and I put up so much time to have this otherworldly feeling. And my Halloween, it's not like I don't do anything horror or anything like that. It's like I say it's spooky cute.
yeah, yeah.
It's like PG-13 is like my Halloween because I
Hmm. Hmm.
want it to be accessible to everyone. I don't want, you know, anyone to feel excluded. I know you can't please everyone. And hey,
Sure.
I've gotten Instagrams on my door for just having like pumpkins and skeletons saying it was satanic, and I'm like, all right, but that wasn't when I was in Ohio. Let's say I was in Florida when
Yeah,
that happened. But yeah, it's like I want in a lot of in my area, a lot of kids from areas that aren't safe to go trick or treating and come to our neighborhood to trick or treat, and I want to be able to provide that for them. And I feel like I'm helping them have a good childhood Halloween, where they can't go knock on doors in their neighborhood, and they're able to experience that in our neighborhood. So I feel like even though I got asked to do a show on Halloween night, and I always disclose, hey, I hand out candy for trick-or-treaters. I can't be there till like 10 o'clock. Like, know that I'm not coming till later because I have to, and I stay, my Halloween trick-or-treating stays open even for like the kids coming a little later. Like, we stay out till like 9 o'clock, even though it ended. I think it ends at 8. I don't know. I'm always out there later because, those kids are trying to hit all the houses and stuff. And I know parents are trying to get, if they're coming home from work and trying to get their kids ready and out. And I know that now that there's a lot of other trick-or-treating events where I do participate in the ones I can participate in and hand out candy. Um, but the trick-or-treating on Halloween. Yeah, you gotta trick or treat on Halloween. And I know there's people trying to say, oh, well, it should be on a Saturday and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but Saturday doesn't work for everybody. Then you're
That's
going to get
true.
to a deeper argument because I'm like, yeah, there's people who are nurses and stuff where maybe their schedule doesn't align with that. So there are people that work on
Yeah,
Saturday. So
yeah,
if someone says, oh, it's on Saturday, I can't do it because of A, B, and C, I'm like, Halloween's on Halloween,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
I agree. There definitely isn't any age. I mean, where is there a rule that says if you're a certain age you can't trick or treat or whatever? I think that's silly. But it's like with a lot of other great things, right? There's always going to be somebody or someone trying to take away the magic, and that's why I'm excited about our collaboration. We can have a chance to take back Halloween, Judy. So
Yeah.
that's what we'll
Yeah.
do. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, and
So
keep it
yeah,
Halloween. And
exactly. Yeah.
I always fight for Halloween, and a lot of people say, "Oh, you're talking about Halloween in August." And I'm like, wait a minute, let's think about this. That's not Halloween taking away from August. It's Christmas.
Yeah.
Because Christmas
Yeah.
keeps creeping up, and they're like, "Oh, fall doesn't start until September 21st, 20th, whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no." Because in November, Christmas is like, la, 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 it's Christmas right after Halloween. I'm like, that's still fall. But
Well, they cram down your throat the next holiday before it's even over sometimes,
yeah.
you know? And again, it's just another way of like just saying, hurry up, don't enjoy it, get through it. And really, all we're trying to do is just say, hey, it's here, let's enjoy it, let's make the best of it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'm really excited for it. I have to get, I know I sent you the demo I have, but I have to get into the electronic sound production. But
yeah,
I have a lot on my plate for this coming. I have to get through the next week of commitments I have. I have an art show which I have to do a lot of I have to do a lot of work for just this week.
yeah. No, I understand. And like I said, if you need help with that along the way, just let me know. And yeah, same. I got a lot on my plate too. I got work and I'm still, working on my bachelor's degree. So that's taking up, I'm almost done. I'm almost done with it, but it's taking up a lot of time. Um,
Oh, I get it.
and
I'm doing a CPR certification course for veterinary care, so I have a deadline for that too, and
yeah, I know every life just gets in the way, huh?
yeah, and it seems like everything comes at the same time, even though it's like good stuff I'm excited to do, but then there's
Yeah.
a lot just happening all at once. I'm like, why is this all happening like in the same week? And stuff just
Yes.
happens, and sometimes opportunities come, and there's like, but then there's like second week of December, there's like shows I've been asked to do, and I just had to, be like, they're like, oh, we invite you to play for this. We want you to do it. We saw your work. I'm like, I just can't. I've got
Hmm.
so much. I don't want to burn out and then not be able to do anything because if it's a show that like encapsulates the whole weekend, I'm like, well, then I just go right back to work. You
Right.
know, and I, I can only do that so many weeks in a row before I'm like, all right. And I have been doing that. Like every weekend I have something. And some weekends I've had double shows. And I'm like, okay, well, how long can I do that before I just burn out? And that's where the mental health thing is like, there's that fear of missing out. And, because especially in the creative industry, it's like, oh, well, if I don't do this, then I won't get that. If I don't take this
Hmm.
opportunity, because it's a lot of gig work.
Hmm.
And, if you're like, oh, if I don't get the gig, I got to put more and more and more. And then sometimes you're like, well, okay, I can only do so much. And a lot of
Yeah.
weekends, it's like event weekends, it's like, there's only so many weekends in a month. And then all the events are happening on this weekend. And I'm like, okay, well, I can only commit to so much. And I'm like, I gotta have time to,
Yeah, you do kind of pull back a little bit, reset for sure.
yeah, yeah. And I have to kind of schedule that. And it sucks saying no. And I don't like saying no, but I have to kind of be like, I can only take in so
So much.
much.
And with real intention too, because if you take on too much, sometimes it could feel like, okay, I'm just getting through this to get through this, right? You want to
Yeah.
you actually care enough about your art and what you do and your performances that you're like, I want to make sure that I'm doing this in a way to where I can actually soak everything up, internalize enough to actually recognize what's happening around me for the sake of what I'm doing, rather than like, oh, I've committed to this, so let's just get out of the way. I know I've definitely felt that way in the past for certain things, and that's certainly not a good place to be. So it is, you're right. It is very important to kind of allow yourself that time to kind of reset, all for the sake of going back into what you're doing with clear intention and understanding. So definitely.
Yeah.
So to kind of recap everything. Um, so we've got our release on the 30th. We've Tourmaline Rings. Um, I know you've got quite a few live shows ahead of you coming up. We've got our Halloween collaboration, side A, side B, and then I know you're going to be working in the studio, right, on your album.
Yeah.
And then we've got future plans. I know all along the way, I know you're going to be doing some live gigs towards the end of the year as well, I'm sure. And I know we've got some future plans for a video some point, probably next year for the Tourmaline Rings release. Um, so that's going to be fun. All good stuff ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a lot going on and who knows what else. So, figure it out. We always figure it out along the way. And
Yeah. Yep. And I'm working on, like I told you before. So I'm trying to work on a piece of music that's a lot like the Absorbed in Light release that I did, which is more like meditative and just music. Um, so it's going to be like a follow up to that, but it's in the collaboration with a company. It's a small company. It's a woman. Her name is Jen, and she has a company called Ahava Natural. So I like order all my soaps and like oils, and like it's super important to me because um, like aromatherapy and like kind of goes into the self care and spiritual care. Her products are like hands down amazing, and everything's natural, much like the spirit of what we're talking about. Very, very intentional. As a matter of fact, when I got one of her packages, when I made an order for her, just as much effort she puts into just the packaging, it's really a special experience. So I've developed a friendship with her. I'm very blessed to know her. She's an incredible person. So I wanted to create some music for her. She makes crystals and she makes candles and all that kind of stuff. And she was like, "Yeah, I would really like to have some of your music to go along when I'm making these things." And I'm like, "Yeah, what more of a reason to come up with a second half to Absorbed in Light than to work with somebody who I enjoy?" So I'm working on that. Definitely gonna wrap up the Halloween collaboration, my end of the song, and then I just released Star Slayer. So now Star
Oh yeah.
Slayer was kind of like just another musical piece that I always had. So it's kind of an older song, but I never did anything with it. So I was taking like some photos, and I thought like, well, this is an opportunity for me to insert this song that I never really knew what to do with in a piece of art that I was trying to create. So I made these like, couple pictures, like a little photo shoot. And I was like, this would be perfect because it kind of explains, it kind of goes hand in hand with this imagery. And so I'm glad that I was able to kind of like put that out officially, even though it's just music, it's still music. And then I have another single called Wither and Fade that I'm going to be doing a video for sometime in the later half of the year. The song's already done. Just kind of, you know, gathering up all the energy and all the power to make this video the way that I kind of see it, envision it in my mind. So yeah, a lot of stuff happening. I'm really glad to be working with you, Judy, and collaborating with you. Again, I will say it a million times. I think you're one of the, harder working people that I know right now in terms of just a musician and putting the effort into your craft. So it's definitely inspiring for me. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Well, thank you, and I'm really honored and grateful that you chose me to work with, and you know, and I'm glad you believe in me. And when I first started, we were talking about collabing, I felt like really intimidated. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's such a established artist and knows how to do all these things. Because hoping I'd be good enough. So that's refreshing to
You have
hear.
you have all the ingredients that I look for, which is just purely and simply just the want and the desire and the motivation that, you know, grit and fire to make something happen, all while doing something truly, remarkable. You have some incredible songs on your own, and, you're only getting better. And that's what it's all about, right? And in a lot of ways, that's kind of concept behind within me. It's not just about me. A lot of people think it's very arrogant, but it's really what is within me is within you. It's in you is within me. So it's a very circular idea. Um, and we're all in this process together. You might be in Cleveland. I'm in California. We're both on this planet Earth. We're all, trying to make something happen. And I'm just, very fortunate and happy that I've been able to do that with you. So it's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited.